I don't think anybody says, hey, I want to do the 10 steps that it takes for me to generate a job offer for Markus, but I'd like to generate a job offer for Markus. Why can't the technology help me pre-populate, know what things need to be done, take me as if it was an expert to the outcome steps, and let me handle the differential things that I need to be the value add decision maker on?
When we look at scaling, there's a couple of facets, not just can we deploy more customers, right? Can we load larger volume data? Can we put more customers on the platform without degradation? Can we scale globally? And then how do we just make smarter integrations so that it's faster to deploy, like same day, and we get them up and running in an hour? So there's lots of facets in scaling that come to play in automation and integrations that we've really been looking at. As technology gets smarter, customers continue to want more automations and push for better and more. They're not settling with what we deliver or even with what they have. They're always pushing those boundaries.
Welcome to the new automation mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. I'm your host, Markus Zirn, and as Chief Strategy Officer and part of the founding executive team at Workato, it is my mission to find these top innovators in AI, automation, and integration and share their journeys with all of you. This podcast is inspired by the Wall Street Journal best-selling book with the same title, written by Workato CEO Vijay Tella. If you would like a free copy of the book, be sure to listen for a special offer at the end of today's episode. So for today's episode, I have as guest with me Kerry Officer, VP of Product for Integrations at iCIMS, and also Al Smith, the CTO at iCIMS. And iCIMS is a leading recruiting and applicant tracking software. And really what we want to do today on this episode is talk about the future of applications. So we chatted a little bit before, and we all three of us feel that actually there's a huge opportunity to rise above what business applications offer today. And Al, you made this comment earlier. You said, really today business applications mostly are a digitization of paper systems. And iCIMS is really a thought leader for this. You can call it an entirely new generation of business applications, which provide outcome-driven user experiences. So that's what we're going to go into. And obviously, as always, this is the New Automation Mindset podcast. So we're going to take the book, The New Automation Mindset, and we apply that compass to look this time into what the future of applications could look like. So to start with, Al, so the statement that business applications today are, more or less a digitization of paper system. Can you maybe explain to the audience a little bit what you mean? Where do you see the deficiency, or where do you see potential to improve?
Yeah. Markus, first of all, thanks for having us, and really excited about the opportunity. If you look, all the major applications out there, ERP, CRM, certainly the space we're in, which, deals with recruiting and workflows, you have two things that kind of fight against, changing the way applications are built. One is the workflow nature of a process-driven outcome. And the other one, it's certainly in our space, sometimes is regulatory headwinds, where there's a requirement around either doing things a certain way, collecting a certain class of data at certain points in the experience. And that's important. We're dealing with people data. And those drive in the face of, doing something different. I do think that as we think about a lot of consumer applications that don't have those headwinds, you've seen innovation that really are more event-driven and the use of AI to really try to focus on the outcome you're trying to get to. And that's how we're thinking about a better experience at the enterprise level is outcomes driven.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Well, let's start with that. Let's kind of think about, so there's much more we can do with applications from the outcome driven perspective. Kerry, why don't we start kind of with some of the basics? So, one of the big topics of the book, New Automation Mindset, is the process mindset. And, it's key to the book, but I think it's also key to better experiences with business applications. And it boils down to integration at the end of the day. So applications need to be fitted into an end-to-end business process, and making that straightforward and painless. I think you guys know it's not easy. Maybe you can talk us a little bit through the iCIMS journey with integrations. Where you started, what phases you went through, and help us where you ended up at the moment.
Yeah, sure, Markus. Our goal was to deliver pre-built connectors between iCIMS ATS and most common HCM platforms and other marketplace vendors. And as we know, this isn't straightforward, right? We have over 6,000 customers and all need an integration between their ATS and their HCM in some fashion. There's a lot of technology options to do. Each platform has a different layer that they want to use in different tech stack. So we really took a step to try to innovate that and take the friction off the customer and really put it on ourselves, right? We had needs around rapid to deploy, easy for service teams to configure, support, right? We want quiet operations. We don't want noise. We don't want challenges and problems. We stepped into this probably about, 6 or 7 years ago of us taking on the development and engineering of this. Our first generation, right, took about a 2-year build, design, launch time. It was an innovation from our traditional flat files, right? We'd had flat files, the old school concepts, right, that are still around. But we decided to get a middleware platform and make a repeatable process. It did require a specialized engineering skill set to build and deploy. It was time consuming to troubleshoot, but we built it, a first generation, one size fits all. Well, upon launch, we realized that this was a slow cycle for changes. And customers are too diverse in their businesses, right? I mean, you can have a customer on a platform and then month to month, they change just amongst their own ecosystem. So it became really clear that our HCM configurations and our integrations, that another evolution was required, right? Our second generation that we put out was really like an 18-month build launch time. We decided to go with looking at some of the tools that were out in the market and a third-party kind of API connectivity vendor, and then our own middleware framework to talk to our platform. Now, the goal of this was to allow for more flexibility and customization and really adapt to the customer's needs and their changing business requirements. Well, this was more flexible. We struggled a bit with adoption on our services team because now we transitioned to more of a services-led utility and tool and integration, and it required a higher skill set to do data transformations and things that they weren't ready for yet. We also had, because we built our own framework and wanted to pull more control in that, it did slow our roadmap down a bit, right? Because we needed to invest some more in that and also with scaling. Now, it became clear at that time after we got our first deployment that this third-party API connectivity vendor had just been acquired. So the whole future of that was really looking a bit bleak. So it was time for us again to look at other options. And at that time, we went through another selection process last year around, okay, we know our pain points. And so let's go out and look at our third generation. We were able to then use Workato for that. And it was a 5-month launch, right? A lot shorter runway there. We now have 100% service-led implementations. And really, it's easier access to the tools. We were able to accelerate 90% of our 24-month roadmap immediately by just moving to the platform. So we knew our weaknesses and what we were going after to move into this third generation. When we look at kind of the split of this, I would probably estimate the second generation was 80% on our iCIMS built framework and 20% in this third-party vendor tool. Now we're sitting about 90% in the Workato tech stack. It's using all of our native integration tools, and we're really able to pivot quickly and address issues there. We're anticipate 300 customers on this platform within the first 18 months. We had 70 customers on it within the first 6 months of launch. So exciting progress, but definitely learned a lot from our challenges moving through our evolution and innovation.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I think there's still lots of business application vendors out there that would say like, okay, here's the API. And maybe it's even like a flat file API. And now, dear customer, you can integrate. It's all up to you. But I think you guys the intent right from the beginning was like, okay, you want to help customers. You want to make it easier for customers. First generation was an integration platform, but it still needed experts or developers, like not the low code. Second generation was more with, an API platform, but then your own tools, so more flexibility, but still not low code. And then I guess you went to the more low code approach with Workato, and it seems like tell me a little bit from a scale mindset. You mentioned a little bit 5 months to get it implemented. Now target over 18 months, did I hear right? Like 180 customers?
About 300, yeah.
300,
more,
even
right?
300. Yeah. Again, in the book, we talk about the process mindset, but we also talk about the scale mindset, because anything that you do, if it's limited to just a few people, it kind of matters less than if it gets broad adoption. So the adoption of integration is really important. Like how has that changed? Maybe you can talk a little bit, maybe from, who could do it before, who can do it now, and then also maybe what have you seen in terms of the difference, the adoption, in phase 1 maybe now versus phase 3 with Workato? What's the delta?
Yeah, I think a lot of things have changed. As innovation is coming forward. We're pushing ourselves, but customers are pushing us. We start to see, even on the customer side, there's skill set gaps and differences. You don't have as large IT organizations where they're just dedicated to their on-prem HCM systems and they have that expertise. There's a lot of cloud. So we see an increase of customers who aren't experts in this area, right? So how do we, as we said, remove that friction? How do we make it simple? And that's where we really continue to push ourselves. And then the customers, we get some of these customers that they are really good at it, and they will push us to be even better and improve. When we look at scaling, I think there's a couple of facets. It's not just can we deploy more customers, right? Can we load more larger volume data? Can we put more customers on the platform without degradation? Can we scale globally? Meaning, are we in the US data centers, EU, APAC data centers? And then how do we just make smarter integrations so that it's faster to deploy, like same day? We get them up and running in an hour. It's no longer a 6-week, 8-week project. So there's lots of facets, I believe, in scaling that come to play in automation and integrations that we've really been looking at. As technology gets smarter, and again, these customers continue to want more automations and push for better and more. They're not settling with what we deliver or even with what they have. They're always pushing those boundaries. And a couple examples of what we're talking about is technical limitations. What would have taken 2 to 3 weeks on our second generation platform to do a historical data load is now taking 6 to 7 hours on our third generation platform. Some of this is the better tools that allowed us to run things in parallel, behind the scenes processing, continuous updating instead of just batch scheduling. So it's really moving the needle to make a lot of this data processing just kind of transparent to the customers. We're really trying to let the tools work for us versus working within the limits of the tools that we had in the past. The other thing I think that allows us to scale better is partnering with our vendor and partnering with Workato, and we're pushing for better options. Just like the customers are pushing us, we're pushing the vendor. We're asking for more. I don't want to have to manually go in and configure that. I want that all automated via APIs, right? Let's continue to do more and more hands off. So a good tech partner is going to listen and work with you on options. We're able to quickly adopt these features and options and pivot to maximize our results. The other thing I think on the services team, so we're talking about who's scaling and who's using this, as we've moved to this third generation, which truly is a 100% service-led implementation and use of these integrations we've built, they're upskilling themselves because the tools are easy to use. They're learning new functions. They're like, oh, I can actually do this now, right? So they're getting really excited because they have something that they can really see the benefit of. What used to be flat file processing, formula processing, is now more complex logic transformations, and they're playing and doing things that there is really elevating and taking some of these further than where we had in the past. Next steps, where we're really looking to scale more, is how do we put this in the hands of our consulting service partners? How do we allow some of these higher end enterprise customers that are really good at their integrations and their tools, and allow them to maybe even configure it and get involved with it and manage and maintain it? We also have the potential to look at allowing these admins to build their own integrations on the platform in iCIMS. So there's lots of options that are opened for us to look at directions of scaling, in addition to, volume, region, customer on that platform.
I'll add one more factor. Everything carried great insight. The other thing at a macro level, if you look at the generations, the other facet is the word reuse. As a SaaS vendor, the magic is, in our case, our applications, all customers are on the same source code. And while they have the ability to extend, this is always one area that there's so much specific implementation to the customer, not just because of who the vendor they're using is, but to Kerry's point, how they've implemented, how they constantly change. I think, Kerry, I don't know if we've studied, but the amount of reuse of what we build has gone up dramatically over those generations. And that gets you a level of scale and quality and other things that are just really valuable on these kinds of areas of touch points.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we even now take a lot of creative solutions back to the customers to talk and present to them things that they haven't considered on how they can leverage data and use some of these more advanced integration features for sure.
Exciting. And look, I think if anything, the audience can take away, as a business application vendor, from just providing an API to really wanting to help the customer, make it easier, scale it, like take a proactive role in delivering the service, it might take some phases to go through. It doesn't come easily. Obviously, having something like a Workato, probably gives you a leap forward, but sometimes you have to go through these phases of experience. So Al, what I'm really curious about, because we chatted, and in the book it talks about process, it talks about scale mindset. We did talk about that. It obviously also talks about growth mindset. And we talked so far about integrations and the basics of integration. And then you made this interesting comment where you said, Markus, I always thought of Workato as something more than just integration. Do you want to allude to that a little bit?
Sure. When Kerry's point, we've built our own frameworks. We've looked at a lot of vendors in the market. And what always stood out to me about Workato is it starts with an event framework. And if you think about integration, certainly is a wonderful use case to handle an event. There's been a change activity of a record created or otherwise, and you want to have an event to go do it. But if you're looking to modernize applications, really it's event processing and dynamic applications based on the event is really the foundation. And, there's more to do on how you apply that, whether that's part of a platform capability that you can expose at the application level, or you bundle it into application experiences. Those are the things we're looking at right now.
Yeah, no, and this is, I mean, for the folks in the audience who are familiar with Workato, it's the Workato trigger concept, which is effectively an event trigger. You know, some APIs from some applications deliver webhooks, kind of events out of the box. Many, frankly, don't. You know, the big HR core systems, many of them do not have webhooks. And so what Workato does, it creates that almost illusion of a webhook. And it does that under the covers. And so it lets people really focus on an event-driven thinking on how to get to that next level of business application, something that's data driven. Events happen in data, and I think it's not just a paper workflow, a digitization. It's more than that. All right, cool. So I think that's an important part for growth. The event platform, the workflows that get triggered by events. Obviously, we just went through a huge year with generative AI and all of that. So, I don't think we can do this podcast without asking about that. Tell us a little bit. I mean, you mentioned eventing, scalable integration, but then AI and generative AI also as kind of like really core to that next future of business applications. What do you guys see there? What's your journey? I mean, we heard from Kerry the journey of integrations. What's the journey of AI and generative AI at iCIMS?
Yeah. Look, I think you know this. We've been involved in an AI program for 6 years, a responsible AI program, and have built really wonderful capabilities we can talk about a little later. But in some ways, I think we all should send a thank you over to our friends at OpenAI. If you think about generative AI, it's been around for a while. It's a great extension over natural language processing, which is what many of us have been working with. But the addition of a chatbot suddenly changed the dynamic, right? So before then, you were a data scientist or you were an AI engineer to work with these models and to think about the applicability of the outcome. And by putting a chatbot, the human interface to that, now suddenly you've democratized who can understand the value of this. That has rekindled, and I think complements wonderfully responsible AI programs and other kinds of AI, so that we think about what does AI do for us, and we've had a premise all along that AI is really good at solving problems beyond human scale. And I still believe at its core, that's what it's great at. What we're seeing with generative AI is, a couple of choices. Like many companies, we've introduced the notion of a co-pilot. And I think the notion's right. I think I can't remember if Microsoft was the first to introduce that naming, but let's give them credit. I think the notion is right in that initially the solutions that make tons of sense are eliminating repetitive, undifferentiated work, giving people a starting point at a higher quality level. It's a productivity lift. In some ways, maybe there's even a bit of delight. One thing you don't see in business software is people saying, gee, I can't wait to get to work to use that business software my company gives me. And I think we're looking at opportunities to say, boy, this really does give me a lift in my day and helps me get things done. And gee, I really enjoy using it. So a lot of the co-pilot solutions we're doing today start there. But there's so much more I think this can do, especially complementing our responsible AI program. I think, when I look at the idea of breaking the notion of just digitizing a paper workflow, the combination of being event-based and then talking about outcomes. I don't think anybody says, hey, I want to do the 10 steps that it takes for me to generate a job offer for Markus, but I'd like to generate a job offer for Markus. That's the outcome I want to get to. And I may or may not be an expert user of the software to do that. And look, there are regulatory steps in there that I need to make sure get covered, but why can't the technology help me pre-populate, know what things need to be done, take me as if it was an expert, to the outcome steps and let me handle the differential things that I need to be the value add decision maker on. That's what we're working on as kind of the next step with this technology. And I, as much as I'm a chief technology officer, candidly, I don't get that excited about technology, but I see the opportunity here, bringing the humanization element into the interface. That there's cases where, right now a co-pilot is probably the right analogy, but there are places where I can see this being the user interface as a next generation experience, because it's really outcomes driven, not step by step or, traditional fill in this page, kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. So, I mean, look, Workato is a growing company. So hiring is something we do every day, that I personally do every day. The things that at least put friction in my workday is, number one, you have to create that job description. And it's something you need to sit down and do. And then frankly, once you've done that and the process kicks off and then you interview someone, so you spent that 45 minutes or hour interviewing the person, and then still you got to sit down and then put the summary of that interview into the system. And it seems to me like Gen AI I think it can probably help you with the generation of the job description quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then it can also, if it has a recording of the interview, it can probably do some pre-summarization already for you. Are you guys doing some of that stuff? I mean, that seems to me like where some real value is.
Yeah, you're certainly spot on. Look, we're not alone, but creating a job description with some smarts, with capabilities of upscaling or downscaling the description based on the talent pool and everything else, that's in market. And we're seeing a really great uplift of people using that Copilot experience. I think of it as getting a very high quality starting point. We're firm believers, particularly with generative AI, that the human is in the loop, that you need to make sure that it's a decision you make. But having a starting point that's high quality really is a lift to people's days. It's not an easy thing. For some people, it's a really hard thing also. Not everybody likes to sit down and write. The other aspect you mentioned that's in market right now, and we're seeing, and I'm a hiring manager like yourself. My staff, it's not uncommon. Will somebody say, hey, we have this candidate, we'd love for you to talk to them. I don't have any time to prep. We've created a Copilot experience that looks at the job, lets you pick a few things that are important about what you want to focus on, and then it'll generate the questions and the expected answers. And then we've gone one step further, and this is important for us. I mentioned responsible AI. Today, generative AI itself is not responsible in the classic sense of being explainable. We're finding that if we actually ask the models to explain why they've selected these questions, why they've selected these answers, the quality of that is not bad. And so we're including that kind of feedback as part of what we present to you, so you know why this question is there. And then you can override these things. On the other hand, maybe you're interviewing 5 or 6, 10 people for this job. You can save these to a library so that you have consistency on how you do it. And these are all things that hopefully make you better at your job and get you faster to the endpoint of what you're doing. So that's stuff that's in market today. To your point about summarization, absolutely. Again, that kind of goes into that correlation of data, doing things that humans aren't particularly good at, which is compiling lots of things beyond scale. Those use cases are coming from a lot of places, including it will be from ours. We think the question is getting the fidelity of that summarization right. The tools will definitely do the summarization. The question is it presented in a form that you find that fidelity helpful for the outcome decision you're trying to make. And that's a lot of the things that we're building in. And maybe I'll add that I think a technology on its own is just that. It's a technology. We have focused on building this in at the platform level so that what's built into the experiences of Copilot is a feedback loop. So the customers can say, hey, that's very helpful, somewhat helpful, not helpful at all. And then the idea of looking at the telemetry of how often people are using it, because unlike traditional software where you may have regression testing and other kinds of functional testing, they may not apply to this class of software. And so what is the definition of high quality and high value? And we're actually looking for that interaction between the user of how they're using it everybody tries something when it's new. If they continue to use it over a period of time, usually that's a proxy to the notion that they see value in it. And then direct feedback about whether this is helpful or not lets you tweak and tune, how the tool works for them.
Mm. Yeah, but I think, what you alluded to me, just emotionally kind of almost reflects that future potential for business applications. Because I think what we have today with, the digitization of paper systems is basically the process that we used to have, it's just on the computer screen. But it could otherwise be in a notebook or writing something down. But still, all of the work and friction is still on me as the person. I think the best example people get, and this is where we probably see with Workato the most injection of generative AI into Workato workflows, is CRM. You can put your CRM system in there. If the sales reps don't put great summaries into the sales process, what's the point? Often even the CRM implementation fails because of that, and generative AI can close that loop and actually make that happen and take that friction. Listen, we all, I include myself, we're all lazy, or maybe busy with other stuff, however you want to look at it. But the good thing is that generative AI is there and it can do a lot of the things. I totally agree with you that the human should be in the loop. It's who knows, maybe one day it'll be straight through processing, but for the time being, it'll be a review, but it'll still just take so much effort. Yeah. Out of someone who has to work in recruiting. But tell me a little bit. So the one thing I'm curious about, everyone talks about responsible AI, right? You guys are obviously in a data domain, HR, recruiting, where data is especially sensitive. How do you guys think about this? What do you do? Maybe you can also talk about some examples where you maybe decided not to do something because you felt, maybe this was going too far. Just very curious.
Yeah, thanks. We started about 7 years ago with a data platform play. We realized we have a lot of data. It's sensitive data, how to use it, how to protect it, how to think about it. I'm glad I made that investment first, because about a year later, we decided to start an AI program. And I think, as you know, we accelerated that investment with an acquisition a couple of years later. But we started with a code of conduct, and it started with human-led, explainability, transparent, reversible. These were really important to us, particularly because of the class of data. And if you use an AI in the hiring process, what you don't want is a thumb on the scale. People talk about bias or intentional or unintentional bias. And it turns out that it takes a lot of work and a lot of focus. And I'll say, honestly, passion by our data science team to build products that don't have a measure of bias in them. And when there is bias, we're able to measure it. So we started with the code of conduct, and then we work really hard at curating the data that we use to train our models, removing data that we know creates bias, like gender, like locations, schools, et cetera. But then actually going further and measuring the bias mathematically to know what is there and know whether or not you're hitting thresholds. The other thing is our team have been passionately involved at the forefront of the industry, leadership roles around fairness and hiring, and making sure we're putting our voice in what is a fair behavior. And there is emerging regulation. And, we open ourselves up to those audits to make sure that we can say third parties look at how we train our models, what the result is, and what the measurable outcomes are. And out of that responsible AI, you end up with a really fantastic way of doing match. And in our industry, this is particularly helpful, matching a person to a job to a person to a person to a profile, and doing those things at scale. Again, let's not forget, at scale is the big part of this. Sure, I could review as a candidate 100 open jobs, but having it recommend some jobs that are close to me because I've indicated that's important, and that fit what I'm good at today or what I'm aspiring to be, things that help me do that at scale and with speed. the reverse of that is very important to all of our employers, of course. Sometimes you have challenges where, you look at it as a good problem. You have 100 open jobs, but you may receive thousands of applications. Now, where do you spend your time? First of all, finding the people who are the best fit and also maybe the most interested in the jobs so that you'd have the likelihood of closing them. But, if you're a B2C company, many of the people who applied for a job may also be your customers. And if you don't give them a good experience, how do you make sure you reply to everybody about the status and what you're going to do? And if you're not hiring them, inviting them to be part of your, candidate community, talent community for future opportunities. These are all things that are incredibly hard, not if you don't have the right automations, and I'll say often the AI to help you select and automate together. And those two things contribute to scale in a big way. And so we've built a lot of that in our programs with responsible AI. I think that it's important that, particularly in hiring, we need to be sure that I understand that the data and the models have contributed to no thumb on the scale, and that we can prove that with explainability and transparency, and we're subject to regulatory things as they evolve, and participating with having third parties audit in a transparent way. So we invest heavily. Now, the things we've decided not to do, at least at this point, we just had a great conversation about generative AI. I'm very bullish on a lot of things it can do for you. What it's not at this point is explainable. In a lot of cases, it's a bit of a black box on how did it come up with that answer. And more importantly, and look, I hope these are data points that should go very quickly to get resolved, I hope. But at this point right now, if you don't know how to prompt that model, that generative AI, and how to ask it, as an expert, if it applies, validate your answers, you may have a situation where it makes up answers, right? People call that hallucinations. Well, in our field of hiring, that's not okay. If you think about generative AI to generate some artwork, well, art is in the eye of the beholder. That's probably okay. You may or may not like it. But when we talk about, generating answers or selecting a match between a person and a job, and it gets it wrong, and it doesn't have a way of explaining it, at this point, that technology is not appropriate. So this complements our responsible AI program, where we know we have high confidence in those outcomes. And then we look for the places where this improves the efficiency, the effectiveness, again, the lift, and if it can change, kind of the process as well.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I really appreciate the effort you guys put in with the responsible AI and really thinking about it. I somewhat have a little bit of a contrarian view here because, again, I've been in hiring positions for a while and in different companies. And I would argue that, when people go like, well, AI might have a bias and, the people, probably are better. I sometimes wonder, because what I've seen in companies is there's clear biases, even when people make the decisions. And who knows, maybe that focus on, taking bias really seriously and training the AI not to hallucinate and not to be biased, maybe that'll actually improve hiring even beyond what people do on their own right now. It's also, I think I always feel people take shortcuts with the hiring because, if you have one position, you got like 200 applicants, how can you look at every single one of the 200, right? You probably take a short cut and look at 20. With AI, maybe we can give more justice to everybody. It comes down to that democratization again.
Yeah, our capabilities in market do that, absolutely. And look, you're 100% right. Humans are biased, intentionally and unintentionally, right? There's no question about that. What you don't want to have is a thumb on the scale from the software you're using and not be aware of that. And in fact, you can still make your own decisions. Again, human in the loop in your end decision. There's so many factors that go into, hopefully, particularly with complex jobs where there's a lot of requirements. I realize there's a class of jobs out there that are high volume and there's a relatively lower bar as to what your requirements are. And maybe there, the AI isn't so important as much as it is, a case of making sure that you're following regulatory and, and I'd say ethical, guidelines on what you're doing. What I find is that most people really care about getting a good outcome. And if AI can help you find, again, the people who are most interested and best qualified as your starting point, isn't that what you're shooting for when you're hiring people, And I think it's important that the tools should be transparent about what you're doing when you make a decision using them as guidance. And that's how we view AI in all cases. It's for better context, better scale. Again, you as a manager can go through the 20 out of the 200, but maybe you missed the 5 fantastic ones that would have made a bigger difference in your hiring. Can it help you do that? So I think there's a marriage there to both. And I do think, to your point, we use AI also around companies that are trying to improve their diversity and to eliminate those kinds of bias. And sometimes the AI is actually really helpful to say, hey, you started with a slate of candidates that was very diverse, and you lost diversity as the process went on, and you lost diversity at this step. Again, how would you figure that out if you didn't have something that could do that at scale and rapidly? And this is, again, beyond human scale, usually for correlation and compute, and AI does that kind of stuff very well. So we also use it in that way, and that's intentional to try to find the bias. So important ways of, depending on what problem you're trying to solve.
No, perfect. No, this is exciting. Listen, really appreciate you guys coming here on this episode and talking about this, just bringing this all together. So it seems to me, I mean, there is this new future of business applications out there. I think there's a bunch of different things that can all come together to get an application from just being like, digitization of paper processes. I mean, there is this low-code integration, right? Or low-code process integration into the end-to-end process. Like your tool, applicant tracking, has to fit with, as Kerry, as you mentioned, with the core HR system. Maybe also go into the next process, which is then the onboarding. Maybe make that all seamless. So there's a lot that can be accomplished there. Event-driven workflows. Being data oriented, looking maybe at exception events and doing something about it before people do something, as humans do something on their own. And then obviously we had a long discussion around AI and generative AI. Maybe as the last question, I'm just curious, do you guys have any examples maybe of this coming together? I can see a lot of those things. Like, for example, if I take an event-driven workflow and the response has to be in another system, now I'm combining the event-driven workflow and integration. That event-driven workflow might have an AI service in the middle of some kind. And I'd just be curious maybe to help the audience see how this all comes together to a more powerful business application experience. Any examples from your domain?
Yeah, no, this goes back to kind of the high volume hiring. That seems to be a major problem. We have one example is a nationwide restaurant chain. They will open a job in the morning and they want to have people working on site in the afternoon. So how do you look at accelerating that and removing the blockers? And a lot of that is with complex integrations as well as automation steps. So it's interpreting results. So it goes everything from you're taking an assessment, you're doing a video interview that's transcribing the transcripts, it's interpreting results. Now it's going to move you to a background check. Now it's going to move you to pick your orientation. You're going to do your I-9 online. So everything has been really immediately put through the paces and connecting to third parties to accelerate that and deliver it so that, 3 hours later, it's like, great, show up at 4:00 for your first shift. This is where we see customers are pushing that envelope and shortening the timeline of these business processes. And really what used to be the human slowing it down of, I have 50 of these, so I got to wait 2 days or 3 days till I get back to looking at that and moving into the next step. We can use that event triggers and interpret those results and continue to integrate with whoever the customer defines where they are in the workflow. And depending upon those results. So really successful. And now they're asking, like, how can we shorten it from 6 hours to 3 hours, right? Again, pushing the envelope.
This is super exciting. This kind of makes me, when you talk to, first of all, probably a lot of people in the audience didn't even think about, oh my God, there's a hiring process where I need the same person in the seat in the afternoon, right? But that exists, right? I mean, in fast food, I think that totally exists. It kind of makes me think about like Formula One or like, car racing and how, what if you have to change your tires in like 30 seconds, right? How does that improve technology in cars for everybody? And I think it really does. But yeah, that's super exciting. Al, I know you had another one in mind here.
Well, I'll piggyback on actually Kerry's workflow. Let's go earlier in the process. Today, 7x24 availability to find a job, because maybe you're working in a job or you're working multiple jobs, and also a certain demographic may not want to talk to a person to start the conversation. So chatbots have been out there for a while, and we have a digital assistant that does a great job. But when you think about bringing the generative AI capabilities to that experience, you can get a deeper level of engagement and make the candidate journey much easier. 7x24 availability, find a job, maybe give your information, maybe get set up for an interview, or to Kerry's point, trigger the workflow for all that processing, which are the series of events that you need to trigger. That is absolutely an area that we're already tying those bits together, right? They exist. And then I would say the other favorite toy all of us have is this. This has changed hiring in an immense way. It's probably the biggest technology innovation to these traditional systems. How much happens on the phone where you can deliver a high consumer experience. On top of that, it's higher quality. To complement higher quality, less error prone for things to go wrong, and that picks up efficiency and speed. So lots and lots of opportunities to think a little differently on what you're trying to do.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I have a little anecdote from, with the mobile phone, and this is actually different applications. It's a ticketing application. Interestingly enough, also in the fast food industry. So this was a fast food casual, sandwich soup kind of restaurant, and they were introducing a help desk, internal help desk. And basically, people had to log tickets in the application. And it was for anything that could go wrong in the restaurant. But the business application, good old digitization of paper processes, right, would require that you go to the back office and then submit a ticket and fill out all the forms, all the fields and so on. It actually took quite a while. And so people were rebelling. We're going like, what are you talking about? If something goes wrong, I mean, why don't you come to us and see? There's going to be 15 people in line, customers. I'm not going to go to the back of the office. It's like my 15-year-old son, he just takes a photo and it's on Instagram in like 2 seconds. It's like, why can't we do that?
Yeah.
And so they actually literally improved. We worked with Workato using a service called Twilio, and we let them take a photo of what's broken, and it would automatically log the ticket in the business applications. It would actually look up from the phone number who submitted it. It would attribute it to the right location of the fast food. You get the whole idea. And so it basically made it more convenient. And I'm sure the same is true in HR application. The same is true in any kind of business applications. I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I like your Formula One analogy, because those industries, food services, retail, hospitality, where they're high volume, there is the need to be precise but fast, make the experience better for everybody through all kinds of hiring, all kinds of process. And we're definitely on board with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Kerry, Al, this was actually fascinating. I mean, this was really cool. Also really made me think at the end, what else could there be? But I think with like process-based integration in low-code fashion, with event-driven workflows, with infusing AI and generative AI in processes, there's there's a lot we can do better with business applications. So really appreciate what you guys are doing at iCIMS, kind of leading the field in that area. And thank you for coming on the podcast here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and appreciate the technology you're bringing out to support our ability to innovate.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you like what you heard, we do have a special offer for you. If you share this or any other episode of the podcast on LinkedIn with the hashtag TNAM for the new automation mindset, that's TNAM, our team will reach out to you and make sure you get a free hardcover copy of the book by our Workato CEO, Vijay Tella. Please make sure to rate today's episode, leave us a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the show so you will never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.